First item, 4.1, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or a local board of the Municipal Act. Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001 regarding council closed session report number PDS 21-119, potential property acquisition update. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first motion for council reporting out of closed session is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Thank you. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions? Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for the first item of council reporting out of council closed session. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland?
Oh, yes.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gartner?
Yes.
Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Kim is absent and Councillor Thompson. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Second item, 4.2, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001 regarding council closed session report number PDS 21-120, potential property acquisition. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion for council reporting out item number 2 is that the report be received and that council direction be confirmed.
Thank you. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions on this one? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Record vote for item 2 of council reporting out of closed session. Mayor Maracus, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gartner?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo?
Oh.
Yes.
Councillor Gallo, did you want to speak?
No.
Oh, okay.
I
Sorry.
just-
Go ahead.
No, I didn't.
No, your vote. Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Kim is absent. Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming by law. Someone like to move that? Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Gardner. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Mr. Clerk, time is 7:03. I'll call this general committee meeting to order. Council, before I get into Councillor Kim, it was his turn to chair. He is not here, so I'll be chairing unless there are any objections. Seeing none. Before we start, we would like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples whose presence here continues to this day. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Procedural notes. Aurora Town Council has resumed in-person meetings for council and staff members only. Residents who wish to view meetings of council should go to www.youtube.com/c/town-of-aurora/videos. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the added items? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gallo, any comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no community presentations, no delegations. We'll move into the consent agenda. We have one item. It is the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority Board meeting highlights of July 23rd, 2021. Council, did you want to move that, Gardner? Oh, you're on mute, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move it, but I'd also like to speak to it.
Okay, so I'll just get you to move it first. Seconder, Councillor Humphreys. Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. There is going to be a Georgina Island fixed link. I'm not sure if council or the public are aware of it, but it's going to be a causeway or bridge to Georgina Island. The second thing is the business operations are recovering quite well, thankfully. And Tamarack Park. Well, Tamarack Park has been problematic. The Conservation Authority agreed to add another $500,000 to the project. So it's now at $1,621,000. We also have a new dedicated climate change specialist, Mr. Tonto. And what he's saying is we're going to have hotter summers and more frequent and intense rains. No surprise. But what the Conservation Authority wants to do is raise awareness, and second, look at potential carbon sequestration in grassland habitats, and including wetland restoration. So I have a comment. If this is something the Conservation Authority is doing and considers important, and we've been talking about carbon sequestration for quite a long time, I think we should be supporting this goal as well in any new community that we are planning. Thank you. I think that's it, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Number 7, advisory committee meeting minutes. We only have one, which are the Aurora Town Square Project Monitoring Task Force meeting minutes of July 13, 2021. They're to be received for information. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gilliland, you got a comment, question? Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, just a question through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Nadarozny. I'd noticed within the report on the minutes to the task force about the timelines and how we might be a little bit behind, which is to be expected. I know construction can be kind of tricky and cause some delays. And so I noticed that there are some discussions on ways to kind of make that time up. And I was just curious if you could kind of expand on that and whether or not, considering a premium was something that, it was something you were choosing to do, not choosing to do, or what were the options that were in front of us that you're considering?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There have been many discussions about the timeline related to the project with the various parties. One of the things we have put on the table is that since our contingency is still relatively healthy and we're through a lot of the risk in terms of the soils and everything, we have suggested that we could consider additional charges to do weekend work or to expedite some aspect of the project if it brought direct benefit to the timeline. So we've said that we wouldn't take that as a general consideration, that we would want very specifically if we paid extra for this to happen, then this would be the impact on the schedule. And so we've put that out there a couple of times, and to date there hasn't been any opportunities because of the nature of where the stage that they're at in the project. But we expect that as time goes on and as they get the shell up and so on, and there's more and more involvement on the site that's more interrelated, there could be the possibility that they might come forward with such a proposal.
Counselor?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. And so with that being said, if there were those opportunities, is that something that would be taken out of contingency then? Just a follow-up question. If that was something we wanted to do, like I understand there's more of a value or benefit as to actually choosing that. There's got to be something that kind of weighs on whether or not it's worth going down that road or just waiting.
Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would absolutely tie it to a specific and identified timeline that we'd be saving. And since that would involve a change order, in other words, we'd be authorizing an additional expense that wasn't in the original tender document, then we would take that from the contingency for the project.
Okay, perfect.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the updates and understanding where the delays are. Obviously, we want to make sure that we make the best decisions. That's going to be the most cost-effective solution and where it makes sense. So if there is, if it's going to take an extra couple of weeks, I'm sure that, saving a couple dollars here and there is something we'd rather see. But obviously, if there's that cost benefit that proves that there's a reason that's going to save us down for that value, then I appreciate that we're looking at both sides.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gallo?
Just along the same lines, I would agree that I'm not interested in finishing it early just to eat up some contingency to be able to whatever open the doors quicker. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever. If there's value added, we're going to generate some income if we do it, whatever the reason is, then I'm okay with that. But just because we have a contingency there, it doesn't mean we have to spend it all. And unless it's for very good reasons, and finishing it quicker than necessary, to me is not bringing value, and we shouldn't be spending contingency on that unless, again, there's a solid reason for it. That's my view on that.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gardner?
Thank you. Apparently I'm off video. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Gallo, and something from experience when we did the SART, we were rushing to open it. And that ended up in a couple of lawsuits. So I think we need to be careful, very careful with what we do if we move up the timeline, and add that to Councillor Gallo's comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, council will move into our regular agenda. Item 8.1, Canadian Achievements, Diversity and Inclusion Mural Design Approval. The recommendations are: 1, that report number CMS 21-027 be received. 2, that the mural design titled Community Builds Community by Moonlight Murals Collective be approved for the Canadian Achievements, Diversity and Inclusion Mural as selected by the Mural Selection Committee. And 3, that staff be directed to work with the artist to finalize the mural design. And 4, that the northern wall of 15242 Yonge Street be approved as the location for the Canadian Achievements, Diversity and Inclusion mural. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson, comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
I had a long discussion with staff about this. I have to say, originally, I wasn't, this certainly wasn't what I was expecting. I don't think many were. And quilt is quite a, well, it wasn't a unique idea to me. But on thinking it through, I think this may be the appropriate venue for what we're trying to accomplish. But I don't know if everybody's seen the quilt. To me, I know this is just a draft. We have to ensure that all parts of that quilt in combination are what council is trying to address with diversity and inclusion. And so in specific, there is a small area that has a turtle on it, and that is meant to represent First Nations or Indigenous people. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something bolder that will represent you know, there's so many groups in the community and even outside of the community that we want to include in the inclusion. So the artwork has to be very specific to be able to identify all of those different groups that we're trying to include. I would like to make an amendment, but I'll wait till other people have spoken.
Okay. Is that all for right now, Councillor?
That's all for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Can I say, looking at this report, I guess it just wasn't what I was expecting, but at the same time, this mural project has been developed without a proper process in place. We don't have our master cultural plan done as of yet. Guidelines really are not solidified to make it seamless. I would have liked to have maybe, seen some things beforehand. I wasn't expecting what was presented today. It's beautiful, but as far as what was being encompassed, is that the message we're trying to, I guess, exemplify? I would have liked to see a little bit more of a process involved, and just for that reason alone, I'm not so sure that this is something we should go ahead with right now, unless there's some. I know this is draft. I like the idea and concept of different fabrics of different communities, and there's a play on that. There's definitely some more play that can be done on this piece of art, and I'm not criticizing that at all, but for me, the process itself, I feel like there's a bit of a missing link, and it's just not complete to me. So at this point, I'm just going to wait and see what my colleagues have to say. But in the meantime, for me, I'd just rather receive at this point and continue on with developing a cultural master plan and what those process looks like, and having a guiding document to kind of help us understand what we're trying to achieve and follow that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. My understanding correctly that there'll be a design, and then it will be, I guess, superimposed or printed on a type of material, and then that material affixed to the building.
My understanding is it would become a digital print, yeah, and then there'll be a wrap that would be adhered to the building. So therefore, it could be removed at any time.
Yeah, I was never aware that was going to be the road we were going to go. I think there was a discussion about having some type of material and then it being on top so it could be taken off in case there is a redevelopment and then put back on. I guess to me, these types of things should be permanent, it should be long lasting, and lots of time spent on its implementation. It feels, as I've said before, somewhat rushed. In terms of the financial implications, although I do kind of like the design, and I don't have an issue with that in terms of process. I mean, this is art, and it's so subjective, and what I like, you might not like, and how do we, come to a conclusion? I would have preferred to have a say in it. I don't know whether that's a closed session or how that would have transpired. But I think it would have been good as a council to have that discussion amongst us to see which direction we would want to go. In terms of financial implications, I seem to recall that there was going to be a donation from Smart Centers, and I don't find that here. I now see that the budget is 10,000 will be funded from the town existing approved operating budget, and perhaps some money from Desjardins to help with some of the initial expenses. Did I miss something in between there? And I may have.
Mr. CEO, did you, or Mr. Rose? Is Mr. Rose here?
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr. Rose.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo. The $10,000 budget, my understanding is that is the money that has been received from the Smart Centers. So in addition to the $10,000, we have been in conversations with Desjardins, and they are extremely keen on supporting this project. But of course, until some of the details are confirmed and we finalize the budget, we haven't been able to go back to them. But so right now we have $10,000, which will not get us to the sort of completion point. So the opportunity is there to again engage with Desjardins for the remaining funds.
So, Councillor, I think that it was just the way it's worded, because we got that donation already, it's just kind of fell into an account. So it's saying it's coming out of the operate, but
Yeah.
no, I agree. The way
Probably
it's
would have been
worded.
good
Yeah.
to have it in there that it came from them. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rose Donahue, are there any strings attached to that? I recall something about perhaps a logo or something on the mural.
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo, not that I'm aware of. I haven't been able to follow up with Smart Centers, and I wasn't privy to the conversations originally. Certainly, I think that's something that we would have to follow up with. But I do know from speaking with Desjardins, they don't have any strings attached to any funding that they may provide. So I can't answer regarding specifically Smart Centers, but certainly happy to follow up and come back to council with that information.
CEO, did you want to add to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can add that having talked to Smart Centers, they are not interested in any kind of significant profile as part of the artwork either. We talked about just a small note at the bottom or a plaque at the bottom saying supported by, but nothing significant. We haven't worked out the final details.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. And again, to me, it goes to process. We didn't open it up to people. We just selected one and off we went. Maybe some others would have liked to have contributed, maybe not. But we didn't actually do that. I hate to say no, because I always supported the idea. Don't like the process. Would it look great there? Probably. Would it add to the town? Probably. Could it have been done better? Absolutely, in my view. Would it have garnered more support? I think so. So, I mean, I'll listen to others and see where we go.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
To you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments. I mean, I'm looking at, the executive summary, and it does look like, there was a call for artists and the selection was made. Last call was August 13th, but there was one late submission. There was a panel and two from our committee, anti-racism committee attended as well. I think it's because it's the first time go at it. We could probably take a learn on what maybe could be done maybe a little differently next time if there's some concerns about how this was done and so on. But it's art is also everyone's opinion as well, right? I mean, I may like something that somebody else may not like, and we would all probably want to see certain things, but it's very difficult when art is just it's what you make of it when you see something. I'm looking at it more of on a positive perspective. for me that, there's an analysis there. There's a call for artists posted, and it was shared many different areas, and asking for a call for expression from our local artists. Artists were responded. It looks like there was we received 5 submissions. So I'm okay. And actually looking at it, I mean, I understand it's, it could be, again, I'm partial to quilts. I love them. So a little different than someone may see something different in quilt. It's all in that perspective, but it looks like this choice was made by the selection committee. And kind of like the fact that it's going to be on a wrap. They're very durable. I think it looked beautiful and adhere to, from what I understand, buildings. So we won't have hopefully much maintenance. So I think, for me, I think it's lovely. For me, I'm happy with it, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone saying that as well, because I certainly don't want to do that. I just think it's lovely, and I think it's the start of the beginning of things we're going to learn through this process. I believe it's the first time that we actually started to move forward on something like this, and I'm okay with it. Thank you very much. Thanks to the committee and staff for trying their best on this, and looking forward to seeing it come to fruition. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Rose. Phil, within the report, there is an explanation of the concept as well as I guess a picture, but the recommendation number 3 talks about staff to be directed to work with the artist to finalize the mural design. Is it the intention that once the design is finalized, that that image will then be, superimposed onto the building, and then that rendering would come to council so that we would have a better sense of what the final product will look like before it is applied to the building?
Mr. Rose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thompson. That isn't currently one of the recommendations in the report, but certainly we are happy to report back to council and bring the final design back to council, or even include, if council wishes, to be part of the process of finalizing the design. In the submission that was submitted by the artist, they said they're very happy to work with the municipality to make sure that the design is exactly how we wish it to be. So certainly we haven't figured out the process of exactly finalizing the design, but I think the more inclusive that process is, the better it can be. So we can either work with the artist directly as staff and as the selection committee, bring that back to council for more feedback and approval, or we can try to incorporate council in that actual process of finalizing the design. We're certainly open to both options.
Councillor.
Thank you. Through you again to Mr. Rose. I think for myself, if the process is to create a high resolution digital file, and then that ultimately will be used to make the final print, I just think, and perhaps it's just me, I tend to be more visual. It'd be nice to see what the end result looks like superimposed on the building, so that we're, those expectations are there in advance of it being applied. I guess where I come from, from the retail sector, sometimes when you look at exterior signage before you install it, that's typically what you do. You do that mock-up, you do that rendering so that everybody knows what the final product is supposed to look like. And I guess that's where I'm going for. So if it's possible, that would be great.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gartner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Thompson, that was going to be my amendment. I think that before anything is approved, it has to come back to council and we have to see exactly how it looks. I didn't think of superimposing it on the building. That's an excellent idea. I'm mixed. The process to me was flawed. Here we're presented with an idea. My comments are on the idea itself. I'm just looking at, we did ask the public to send in their suggestions for the mural. And I was just looking at it, which is, I couldn't find it, which is why I didn't speak further the first time. We've got requests for an Indo-Canadian person, Indigenous, women, LGBTQ2, that's mine, Afghani, Iranian, celebrating Nowruz, which represents, Iran and Afghanistan, West Africa, South Asian, Jewish heritage, Middle Eastern, founding cultures. So if we are going to go the route of a quilt, I think that all of these need to be included by some recognizable design in that quilt. And that's what I was speaking to Phil about today and to Ms. McDougall. So there needs to be more work on this. Excuse me, there needs to be more work on this without a doubt. If council wants to go forward with this design, I think we need to take the residents' suggestions, and we may want to speak to the cultural center. They've just hired somebody, or the library. This needs to be a very special mural. It's going to be representing council and our town, hopefully for many years. There is one glitch, and I did speak to Phil about it. Durability of the surface with respect to, I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but should there be a cut in it, how we would repair that. I don't know. Phil, have you had a chance to speak to the manufacturer?
Mr. Rose?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardner, I have not. I reached out to him by email after we spoke this afternoon, but I haven't heard back from him.
Right. Well,
Councillor?
thank you. When we spoke late, and Councillor Gallo has a point about, actually, I think if I'm right, Councillor Gertner and Councillor Gallo being painted on the wall. Mr. Donahue, could you speak to that? Why this medium would perhaps be preferable?
Mr. Rose?
Certainly. Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gardner. It kind of, twofold. One is that we realized there was a number of municipalities that were going this route in terms of vinyl banners. I think the technology, although I'm not entirely aware of the evolution of it, but I think the technology has changed so you can actually do this type of application on a larger scale, like the wall that we're proposing. We did look at I think it was actually the mayor that found a mural that was put at the Waterfront Neighborhood Center down in Toronto, probably similar size and scale of the one that we're looking at. It was a vinyl application. And so it's very durable. It's treated with anti-graffiti. It allows you, I guess the other benefit of this project, or this avenue, is that because we're talking about a major busy intersection, from a liability and insurance perspective, it certainly allows us to move the liability to the vinyl application installer in terms of putting that up. We had talked previously when we brought another report to council about the artist having to have either work from heights training or some other health and safety training in order to do that application. And so by going with a vinyl route, it actually moves the liability away from the artist as well as the municipality to the installer. So I think there's a couple of reasons. One, the vinyl application is much more durable. It's an easier install than paint. Obviously, it's less timely, but it's also from an insurance liability perspective, it's probably the better route to go for the municipality.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. With council's permission, I would like to suggest an amendment in case this goes forward.
Go ahead, Councillor.
It would pretty much, it's actually exactly what Councillor Thompson said, that council see the final design as it would be on the building, and that we have the final decision on this.
So can I make a suggestion to your amendment? How about if you just change the third clause and say that staff be directed to work with the artist to finalize the mural design and report back to council for final approval?
Right. Do we need to have the Councillor Thompson's point about how it would look on the building, superimposing it on the
Well, I'm
building?
sure staff would take that into,
Okay.
and bring it back to us. I don't think we need to have that detail in,
Okay.
in the amendment, but if is that the gist of what you're trying to get to? Is for it to come
Exactly.
back for us to have final approval after they've worked with them?
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, so
And
Mr. Clerk, did you get that? Can we get that up on the screen? Would someone like to second that? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Any comments or questions to the amendment? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And I appreciate the fact that staff will take that direction and apply it to the building so we can see what the final thing looks like. You know, to me, it's no different than what we go through the public planning process and any application that comes forward. You know, we always have a rendering of what the development will look like so that it's clear what the expectation is. And it's the same thought process for me. I just want to know what it's going to look like on the building when it's all said and done.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions to the amendment? Mr. Clerk, can we get that on? So the amendments that staff be directed to work with the artist to finalize the mural design to be superimposed on the building to be brought back to council for final approval. Councillor Thompson, you good with that? Councillor Gardner, you good with that? But it's there now. I mean, I don't think there's an issue with it being there. I think it just maybe helps for a little bit of clarity, but that's fine. Councillor Gardner, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that. If I believe I still have another minute or so on the
Councillor Gardner,
floor.
if you're speaking, you're on mute. I just want to make sure you're okay with that since you moved it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Thank you. Yes, I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
Okay. Councillor Humphries to the amendment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're making this amendment that it comes back to us. What's the purpose? Is it for us to say that we like the art or not? Or just the way it's going to look aesthetically on the building? See, Mr. Mayor, because I'm just not a qualified art person.
I understand what you're saying, but I think that what I'm gathering from the conversation around the table is that we wouldn't mind making sure that we maybe have some of our thoughts and what we would consider to be acceptable as far as some of the things that are in the mural, make sure that they're in there, and to just work with the artists through staff, through ourselves, our comments be relayed to the artists as they continue through the final process when it comes to us, and just to ensure that there's transparency and make sure that everyone's good with it at the end of the day. That's what I'm hearing around the table.
Okay, see, Mr. Mayor, that's fine. I think this is more suited though to a public arts council, someone who really understands artwork, understands what we're looking for, and in places that I think art can be very individual, and what we see may be beautiful, but maybe not exactly what I like or what you like. So I think if the intent is there, which I think it's going to be, and the panel will be looking at that, I just hope that no one's thinking that I have a better critique of an artist than anyone else is, because I'm not. But I know I'm good. Yeah, I'll go along with. I hear what you're saying, and it's fine. But I feel like it's just too much. That's all for me personally. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo to the amendment.
Thank you. And I'm just trying to, think this through in my mind, similar to, I guess, Councillor Humphries, what's the point of this and what are we going to accomplish by it? Let's say it comes to us and we look at it and we say, I can't stand that, and then what? And again, who are we to say whether it's good or not? It's all subjective. I may like it, you may not like it. And how do we end up with a decision? And this is all as a result of not having a proper process and policy and perhaps direction. I don't know. I'm happy to go forward with it because I'm curious to see what it would look on the building, but I reserve my right to say, go back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions to the amendment? Councillor Gardner, you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
For clarity on on the amendment, there's two reasons that I believe it should come back to council. First of all, I believe council needs to approve what is going on that wall. We don't have to be art critics, but I think we have to ensure that it has the elements of diversity that we're looking for. And I've just read out the comments from public who have submitted people to represent, and I don't know, we probably have 10 or 11 different cultures in Aurora that we want to represent. That we want to represent if we're talking about diversity and inclusion. So that's part that I want to see if we are choosing a quilt. But also, this has to be council's decision. We need to see the final product.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gillan, to the amendment, please.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I agree with what Councillor Gallo had said. I won't repeat everything, but I do feel that this does need to come back to council for some sort of approval. I'm with Councillor Humphreys with having a public council to make these decisions. I love the fact that the task force has their input. Definitely, that's what they're there for. With this particular mission of the diversity that we're asking. Again, but I digress. I'm going to fall back on the public cultural master plan and not necessarily having the perfect process. And this one's kind of messy. We tried. It's been a real tricky one to navigate, and I think that's kind of why we're here having this discussion right now. I would have liked to have seen a little bit of a variety in a closed session so we can have a discussion in public. I certainly don't want any artists feeling like they're being singled out. This is not what this is about. Everybody's art that's submitted is beautiful, and definitely there's no lack of talent. But at the same time, we are trying to make a decision on the four corners of our downtown, and I think a little bit more pre-process before coming to this is in order, and that's because of the lack of the cultural master plan. So I would support the amendment. However, just falling back on process on the entire thing, it's just something I wouldn't want to support at this time. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions to the amendment? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Garner, you're opposed to the amendment?
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I saw your hand go up. I was just
a little late there, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I appreciate this. Sorry about that. All right. That carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Gallo, second time.
Mr. Mayor, I think I still had the floor.
Oh, I apologize. Go ahead, Councillor Garner. Finish up if you'd like.
Thank you. I certainly agree with what Councillor Gallo and Councillor Gilland has said about the process. I'm not pleased with the process, and I may be voting against this motion, but certainly if it passes, we need to be very careful what we decide, because it's a crucial subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Second time.
Just some final points and along those lines as well. Let's please not underestimate the importance of this. Image of the municipality is at stake. I think if you just Google town of Aurora, Ontario and click on images, guess what you're going to see? You're going to see multiple images of the other mural. So it's really, really important we get it right and we take our time to get it right. To me, there's no rush. We are where we are. I don't like the process, but let's see if something can come out of this. But I don't want to rush it. If we get a mock-up, that's great. If it's not what we're looking for, we should be able to get back to the drawing board and figure something else out until we get to the point where we're satisfied. We may not all be satisfied, but what we have in front of us, a committee of 3 or 4, one example, to me just isn't enough. Isn't enough to put on that wall. That'll be there for a long time, most likely. So let's take it to the next step and see where it goes. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we have 8.2, Aurora Town Square Governance Update. The recommendations are: 1, that report number CMS 21-029 be received. 2, that the fees and charges bylaw be updated to accommodate all Aurora Town Square services, activities, and use of property as necessary. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Gallo. Comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
Thank you. It's curious the way this is worded, because we're pre-approving. We do have some information on the use of the rooms, etc., but we don't have information on the fees for the services that we will have to be providing.
Mr. Rose?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gardner. If I hear you correctly, Councillor Gardner, you're asking about if my understanding of I guess I just say this. My understanding is that there is a council report coming forward in October from Finance, talking about changes to the fees and charges schedule. Some of those amendments are going to incorporate the fees that we have for that we will be able to use for Town Square. And I think one of the recommendations is specific to Town Square. I think we're moving from specific fees for room rentals to a range of fees. For example, $10 to $30 per hour. By doing that, it allows us to actually take the fees that we think are appropriate for Town Square. So right now we don't have fees associated for each of the rooms that will be coming online for 2021, which are the spaces adjoining the library, those new expansion spaces, the 2 programming rooms, Megan and Lebovic on their first floor, as well as the reading garden. So what we're hoping to do is once the report comes forward to council regarding the fees and charges schedule, and if that's approved, then we will be able to put together a fees and charges schedule specific to Town Square for the spaces coming online in 2021 using that bylaw. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Gardner.
Councillor?
No, but I don't think I posed it clearly. So it's fees and charges read Town Square, services, activities, and use of property. But in fact, we don't have, some of those aren't in place yet. So you're asking us to pre-approve what gets decided by staff, as opposed to waiting until that's all been decided and then it comes to council for approval.
That is correct. I see Ms. McDougall on here, but I will say that that is partly correct in the sense that a lot of this is driven by the fact that we will have rooms that are coming on board, the new spaces adjoining the library, prior to the end of 2021. So we're trying to poise ourselves to be able to have fees and charges that are available to us beginning in January of 2021. I do know with the report that's coming forward from Finance, there will be a public notification process as well. But what we will be able to do is once we get approval, hopefully from council through the finance report in October, to be able to use the revised fees and charges schedule to pick and choose the fees that we want to associate with the rooms and the services and the activities accompanying the new spaces that are going to be coming online at Town Square in 2021.
Councillor?
I think do you mean 2022?
Correct. January 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, I'm sorry. I'm just, but I don't have the information on what we're going to be charging for the services and activities.
So,
That's going to be coming to us at a future time.
yeah,
Ms.
Counselor,
McDougall,
I was just,
I'm
yeah, Counselor.
misunderstanding?
sorry, I was just going to add, it'll be coming back to us in a bylaw where we would have to do a final approval.
But why would we be, okay, I don't understand why we've got a report on it at this moment. So through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. McDougall
Sure.
would like
Ms.
to
McDougall?
respond.
I hope I can be, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope I can add clarity. Just simply, at this point, our fees and charges bylaw identifies spaces literally by name. The rooms are all identified in our fees and charges bylaw. Therefore, the Aurora Town Square is not identified anywhere in it. So at this time, we're trying to capture the opportunity for us to have fees and charges that we can apply to these spaces in the interim. And by therefore incorporating, and simply tonight's motion or recommendation is to make sure that council recognizes we want to include Aurora Town Square as part of that fees and charges bylaw. At this point, they're not mentioned anywhere in it because it is so specific to each and every individual room within our spaces. This is just so that we can apply Aurora Town Square to our fees and charges bylaw.
Counselor?
Thank you. That helps me. Can this not come back? But when this is all sorted out, there's a lot of things to be sorted out with this, including, I think, IT. Can this not come back to us in a report? Is it just going to come back to us in a bylaw?
Ms. McDougall?
Certainly through the fees and charges bylaw that's being presented from finance in coming weeks, I believe, it will identify the spaces and the fees and rental charges, no different than currently what's in place for Magna or Magna Lobovic, for example. We would just apply it, give it in our world, recreation, we would have a space known as the additional multipurpose room 1 or multipurpose room 2, and the fees would be applied and ability for us to use them. So you will see that information coming through finance in the short order.
Counselor?
Thank you. I'm fine with it, but I'm just going to say that's not services. And with this project we've got with Town Square, we're probably going to have quite a lot of services to offer. So I just wanted to know what those fees were going to be. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Just really quickly, Councillor Gardner had asked whether or not there will be a report attached to the bylaw when it comes to us. I'm not sure that that was answered. I think it's no, but maybe we can get that.
I'll go to Ms. McDougall. Did you want to answer that? I was going to go to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, but go ahead.
No, Ms. Wainwright can certainly take that.
Okay, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So next month, I believe it's the first GC in October, we have a report coming forward on the fees and charges, and a copy of the revised bylaw is also included in that report.
Will there be a report attached to that?
Yes, there will be a report attached to that.
Thank you. Councillor?
And will some of the things that Councillor Gardner spoke about be included in that report?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the report includes the fees for the facility spaces. And as Mr. Rose identified earlier, we're generalizing the fees for the facility spaces to provide a range based on the type of room and the type of service required in those spaces.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.3, second generation asset management plan. We have a presentation first to be provided by Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just share my screen and then I'm going to introduce our consultants to take over. So earlier this year, we had a workshop with council on the second generation asset management plan. This is the follow-up meeting to that. There are some key actions that are required for us to meet the Ontario regulations. This meets the ones that are required middle of next year to evaluate the costs and to maintain current service levels based on asset age, which is basically an accounting definition of asset age and asset use, and also approved the levels of service for many of the core assets. Now, I'm sure if you've seen the report, some of the numbers.
Ms. Mayor Kessel,
Yes.
Mr. Clerk, can we get that removed so we can read that or get it shifted over? Or?
Shifted over?
Ms. Mayor Kessel, you can't see it. Like your screen, like your picture is actually in the way of the wording of the. So we're just it's a technical thing. There we go. We got it. We got it.
Yeah, I can't actually do that. So
thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Mayor.
Okay. So the financial impacts are identified in the report. I just want to make sure, I know some of the numbers that are in there are quite scary and quite large, but just to let you know, this is based on the initial information before these service level measures are actually used, and we can get more refined information as we move forward, especially as we complete phases 2 and 3 of the asset management plan that are coming in the next few years. And the fiscal strategy analysis is also underway, which will give us a better understanding of what those future requirements are. So tonight, I'd like to turn this over to Mai, who was available earlier this year when we had our presentation in our workshop from Public Sector Digest, and Matthew, and they'll be taking through the next presentation.
Thank you, and Mai, welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I will just share my screen so we can get started. All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm very excited to be here. As Rachel mentioned, the last time we chatted was way back in May. So I'm excited to bring forward this asset management plan for the town of Aurora for 2020. Now, the asset management plan is about a 200-page document, but fear not, about 100 pages of that document is just the appendix. It's just the appendices. There's a lot of maps, there's a lot of images. So really, I will be summarizing the 100 or so page document in about 10 minutes. Now, before we get started, I wanted to really just commend your staff on the level of effort and commitment that they put into this project. It was an excellent collaboration across the board from different departments: engineering, operations, recreation, IT. It was not just a financial exercise as typical, previous AMPs are. So really kudos to your team and to your staff. As Rachel mentioned, this asset management plan is in compliance with the 2022 requirements. Now, this requirement was previously in 2021, but the province extended all requirements by a year, which is why we're presenting it today. This asset management plan focuses on your core assets, so that's your roads, bridges, water, wastewater, and storm. That being said, we did also take some time to look at your non-core assets and to refine the data where we could, but not into as much detail as the core assets. Within the asset management plan, we've defined your current levels of service, the ones that are mandated by the province, but also ones that staff found valuable to track that would aid in their decision-making process. We analyze your inventory from the attribute information available, condition information, and just the quality of the data that you have. We documented and defined your life cycle and your risk and criticality models and your strategies that help you to prioritize your projects and your asset replacements and rehabilitations. And we've also documented some of the growth projections and impacts that may impact your current levels of service. So that's for the 2022, which you see here today. Come 2024, you'll have to do the same exact thing, but for all of your non-core assets. And within the Ontario regulation, they do not mandate any metrics for your non-core assets. So staff will have the flexibility to pick the metrics that they deem necessary to track for these assets. And then come 2025, this is really the last flavor of the asset management plan, and it is concerned with the proposed levels of service. And that will require a lot of effort, because you will have to define for the 10-year capital forecast, what are your proposed levels of service, and can you financially afford and sustain them over that 10-year period? You'll also have to define the risks associated with proposing those levels of service and how that will impact your current levels of service and your assets. Just before we get started on the numbers and and my favorite part of that, I want to touch back on that council training session that we had to say that asset management and these assets are all about the service that they're providing. So whether it's emergency service, recreation, it's about what that asset provides from a value perspective. And that's really what the level of service is about. And that's really the focus of this Ontario regulation. And according to the international standard, the ISO 55000, that level of service is the balance of the cost of providing that service with the performance of that service, and by extension, the performance of your assets, and then the risk that you're willing to take or tolerate to provide that service at that level. So jumping into the numbers that I love. Now, please keep in mind that these numbers and this asset management plan is based on 2020 year end. So it is a snapshot in time, and it is based on the most recent data that we have up to 2020 year end. And now in terms of the town of Aurora's asset portfolio, it's about $1.5 billion in total replacement costs, with the majority of that going towards your road network and then to your water and your storm. For your average residents, what that looks like per household is about $77,000. And that is just the value of those assets, of maintaining and owning those assets. So it's not the service to for snow removal or garbage disposal. It is just the value that these assets hold. So it's a pretty significant investment. From the performance aspect or the condition, about 79% of your assets are in fair to better condition. So as you see in that graph at the top, it's ranked from very poor all the way to very good. So 79% of your assets are in fair or better. And that table at the bottom will identify where that asset condition information is coming from. So the source of that information. So for roads and your bridges, you've got very reliable data coming from your road needs study and your bridge inspections. Those are up to date. If you look at your storm network, 100% of that condition is age-based. And as we've discussed before, age is not always the best determinant of condition or performance. So it's important to look at how reliable that information is and how it's going to impact your forecast. And then for all of the non-core assets, we really relied on staff expertise and staff assessments to update that condition information. And the reason that it's important to have that good condition information is because it's going to impact your annual capital requirements. In terms of that annual capital requirement, it's about $48 million on average. And as I mentioned, those capital requirements are based on your asset condition and the service life remaining for your assets. Now, this graph here is a 50-year graph or a 50-year time frame in 5-year bins, with each asset class having its own unique, distinct color. What I want to note as well is that these asset management or these annual requirements are not set in stone. They are subject to change based on the refinement of replacement cost information, refinement of condition information, and of course, as staff begin to operationalize their new levels of service metrics. So it is an evolving and constantly changing number. You take that 48 million for annual capital requirements, subtract the annual capital funding that is available, about 12 million, and you end up with that deficit of $36 million on an annual basis. As I mentioned before, this annual deficit is based on maintaining your current level of service based on the capital replacement and rehab activities that you currently perform. As staff continue to define and track their current levels of service, establish their desired levels of service, these capital requirements may change. I'll skip over this one because it's essentially a reiteration of what I just said. In terms of what that looks like from a tax or rate implication, we've recommended a 2.9% tax change for your tax-funded assets over a 20-year time frame. For your water and your wastewater assets, about a 2.2% and 0.4% rate change respectively in a 10-year frame. timeframe. And then for your storm assets, which are also a rate funded asset, we've recommended about 11% over a 15-year time period. And what I want you to note here is that the Ontario regulation only allows us to add sustainable and predictable grants and transfers. So think OSIF and gas tax. Any one-time grants or transfers will continue to be an essential source of revenue for your capital requirements, but it will not be factored into financial plans. The other thing that may actually impact your tax and rate changes is how you prioritize your asset management program, and also what your desired levels of service will look like, because those will also impact the bottom line capital requirement. In terms of key recommendations, the first and foremost is really to continuously refine your asset inventory data, whether that means updating replacement costs on a regular basis, using the most accurate tender or project prices, having some sort of documentation or data governance policy in place so that the information is standardized, consolidated, and consistent for all departments. And having a condition assessment strategy, whether it's internally by staff or by external consultants, that's updated on a regular basis. And to continue to collect and to track your current levels of service so that come 2025, you can have an intelligent conversation around what your proposed levels of service need to look like. And then finally, in terms of your next steps, as I mentioned, during this project, it went from a financial exercise to a holistic, coordinated effort by all departments. So it's important to continue to operationalize your asset management program through the citywide software, which is the Asset Management Inventory Database, so that all your staff and departments are on the same database, speaking the same language, centralized and standardized. And as you prepare for your 2024 and your 2025 requirements, it's important to look at developing some sort of communication strategy to engage with your public so that they can, so that you can receive feedback in terms of what their expectations look like for their levels of service. And finally, just to end on this note, that this asset management plan and the asset management program as a whole is a living document. It's breathing, it's constantly evolving, and requires constant upkeep. So it's important to make sure that the information and the data going into it is constantly refined. And that's about it for my presentations. I welcome any questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Council. We have two recommendations. One is that report number FIN 21037 be received, and two, that the second generation asset management plan be endorsed and the service level measures therein be approved. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Gill, and seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions to the presentation or the report? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Not really a question. I don't have any questions for the report. It's a very lengthy document. I don't know if all of you got through it or not. I didn't. So I would like to ask whether there's an urgency to approve this next week, or if we can push it to the next council meeting. It's a pretty important document, and especially when I see things like service level measures, it would be beneficial for me to dig a little deeper, and I'm happy to, if I have questions at that point, to set up a time with staff and have my questions answered. If everyone else is fine with what they have and they're prepared to approve it, so be it. I'm just letting you know that I did not spend the time that I think I need to spend on it in order to make a decision.
Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what this report is requesting is only the approval of the measure themselves, not the specific service levels. That's going to come at a later date. That's part of the requirements for 2025. So there isn't the urgency at this time to approve it at the next council meeting. So if council does feel that they need to take a little extra time, that time is available. We're not making any decisions immediately based on this. This is going to inform future analysis, particularly with the fiscal strategy.
Councilor? Hear what everyone else? Okay. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I was going to ask the same question on what the estimates were based on. So I'm pretty sure that you've answered that question. As far as the repair and replacement and the service levels, and the estimation, is that a conservative number that you guys have presented tonight?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel? Or did you want May? Did you?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, sure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So these estimates are based on mostly on asset age, which is more of an accounting definition of useful life of an asset. That's why we're seeking the approval of the service level measures, because once we start using those measures and we start factoring in our service life activities, then the numbers will become more reliable, and likely some of them will be lower, and it will be more reliable as to what our reserve requirements will be in the future. So there's more work to come.
Councillor?
Thank you. So essentially, you're just trying to find approval for the formula or measures to collect the data in order to fully understand what the life cycles are of our assets and how we plan to and prepare to actually maintain them and what to expect for budgeting down the road. Correct?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Councillor?
Thank you. And from what I understand, by 2025 is something that we need to have implemented.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. That's what's required under the Ontario regulation, but we do expect to be well before that date.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I guess it's kind of an odd question, but I did get a chance to look through the entire report. I can't say I read every single detail, but I did go all the way to the end, and I didn't really have an understanding of the trees. They were very hard to read and what the points of them were, and to even comprehend or understand some of the things that I could read. I didn't know what that would mean to me. So that's one question. And then the second one would be, we certainly had received a ton of maps of stormwater management locations. And so again, I was just trying to understand the relevancy of, you know, what you're trying to communicate to us and what this means with the measures that we're trying to approve tonight.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Ms. Abdu to answer this, please?
Sure. Ms. Abdu?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So to answer the first portion of that question, I believe you were mentioning the decision trees, and that ties directly into the life cycle strategies that were built for the roads assets. With relation to the actual maps, those tie specifically to levels of service that are mandated by the province to have in the asset management plan. So that's why they were in there. And because of just the sheer amount of assets, we had to really zoom in and section off these different maps, which is why there's so many of them. Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. I guess it just wasn't clear, and I couldn't really read the decision trees too much, and the words on it were really unclear, so I didn't really know what I was looking at. So if this does happen to wait until the following council, maybe help us kind of understand what those words say so we can have a fulsome idea of what you're presenting. I think that would be helpful. Looking at the stormwater management maps, okay, that's great to see that they're all there. Does that mean that are they highlighted to say like there's a certain amount that's got to be under repair? I did notice that within the report that our stormwater management maintenance is probably one of the biggest things and biggest concerns moving forward with our budgets moving down the road. So was that part of the reason why we were given all these maps, or are they supposedly highlighted in a way out of urgency? If you could just kind of expand on that.
Ms. Abdu, or did you want me to go to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can answer this question. So,
okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So the maps are not there to really highlight anything other than just the connectivity of your stormwater network. That is one of the actual technical levels of service that are mandated by the Ontario regulation. When it comes to the levels of service for the storm, there are none currently that talk about or touch on the maintenance aspect. That would be something that staff can certainly add later on. But those maps are purely there because, one, they're mandated, and they would give you a visual a visual of the connectivity of your stormwater network. Thank you.
Counselor.
Thank you. And just for Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, and I'm sure we'll probably cover this more in the next report when we do approved measures such as these. What were the key factors in identifying the stormwater management? I do see that within the report there that that is a really huge expense that we need to be looking at down the road. So what were some of the key indicators that helped you define that need and the expense we're about to foresee? Because I do have some concerns down the road, especially when we're looking at an annual 11% in that capital budget within that area. So if you could just kind of give me a little more information on that, would be great.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start this off and I'll ask Mai to fill in a little bit of extra, but just to give you a bit of background, as you remember when Ms. Mahale came forward with the stormwater management report earlier this year, or was it late last year? I can't remember the exact date. There was a number of projects and activities that were included in that, but we weren't able to afford to do all of them. So part of it is the overall stormwater network, making sure that we can afford to do the projects that need to be done to maintain the town appropriately. And I can ask Mine to speak more specifically to the work that's done here.
Bye.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when it comes to the stormwater network, it is one of the more undervalued networks that we see with many municipalities, most municipalities. And with this, in this particular asset management plan for the stormwater network, all of the assets were assessed using age. And so that definitely plays a factor into the capital requirements, which impacts what the rate change looks like as well. So because the annual requirements far outweigh the capital funding that is allocated to your stormwater, that is why you see such a significant rate change. And I hope that answers your question, but please let me know if it didn't. Thank you.
Yeah. Counselor.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did Councilor Gardner have her hand up first? Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Ms. Abdu. Thank you for the presentation. You certainly put a lot of work into identifying, the replacement costs over the life cycle, as well as the fiscal strategy and sort of the annual contribution necessary to achieve that end goal. But I'm just wondering, how did you account for the provincial and federal infrastructure funding that is necessary on an annual basis?
Mai.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is accounted for within the financial plan or within the financial strategy and is applied for each asset category, whether it's according to the ratio of their weight or based on staff input.
Councilor.
Thank you. And through you to Ms. Abdu again. And would you have assumed that it stays at a static level, or did it have sort of a substantive increase year over year?
Mai.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I would say that it was static year after year. Within this asset management plan, we do not look at growth. We do not look at things. We do not incorporate things like inflation. So I would say it stayed static.
Councilor.
Thank you. And the reason I bring it up is that it's been a long cry by the municipalities in general, both through FCM and AMO, which are both federal and provincial associations, that there is a substantive infrastructure gap when it comes to municipality. It is hundreds of billions of dollars. As we know, municipalities own the vast majority of infrastructure, and yet out of all three levels of government, municipalities only receive 10 cents on every tax dollar. And both FCM, AMO, and the municipalities in general acknowledge that we cannot do it alone. We cannot do it just based solely on our tax base. We need the provincial government and the federal government to substantially ramp up the funding they provide municipalities in order to preserve these assets. There's no two ways about it. And, I know year after year, they talk about a little bit more here and there, but, I certainly urge my colleagues, there's plenty written by FCM and AMO about what is needed. But I think the last accounting was some $750 billion is needed across this country to maintain this level of service. And so I do think it's necessary to have an asset management plan. We need to work on this, but we cannot do it alone. We need those other levels of government to step up and in a big way.
Thank you, Councilor Thompson. Absolutely. I'd encourage everyone to look at AMO and what FCM has talked about, and year after year, you're right. That's exactly what we hear year after year. We hear about massive deficit and the fact that it's unsustainable for us as municipalities to continue in this manner without the help of our federal and provincial colleagues. Council, any other call? Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I made my way through most of the report, but it was difficult for me. With respect to something that's right at the front, the financial strategy that you mentioned again tonight, I don't understand. So it goes asset type, years until full funding, total tax rate change, annual change to the tax rate. So are we saying in this chart, are we adding the 2.9 and the 2.2 and the 0.4 and the 11%? Well, the 11% is for is rate funded. Oh, actually, so is the everything is rate funded except for the tax increase. So are these things that we are going to have to be doing every year until we catch up?
I see you shaking your head, yes, but go ahead.
Oh.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think this would be a good question to defer to Matthew Van Dommelen.
Okay, Ms. Winger, Van Kessel.
Thank you, Manny. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it would be an increase in average annual increase to be able to get back to that. Now it is different, right? The tax funded was over a 20-year time frame, right? Water, I believe, was 15 or 10 years, and then your storm was 15 years. Is that what you're looking for? Sorry.
Unfortunately, I think I'm right in my understanding. So these are the annual increases for different numbers of years for different assets.
I'm seeing heads nodding yes, but Matthew, go ahead.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
And I guess to anybody, so is this at the moment, I mean, we're at this stage and we're getting towards the end of 2021 and we'll be going into a budget. So is this at the moment what we're going to be asking the taxpayers for?
Ms. Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the first cut in the first phase of the asset management plan. There's a lot more work that needs to be done before we finalize what those annual increases need to be. And that includes actually doing the approval of the service levels that we want to keep on a sustainable basis. And once we get to that work, which is due in 2025, that's going to provide council with options. It's going to provide council with options of service levels and what the cost of those service levels would be on an annual basis to do those contributions to reserve. So this is only the first cut. It's based on an accounting age. It's not based on the actual service levels. And there's more information that needs to be done and more analysis that still needs to happen before we commit to this.
Councillor.
Thank you. Ms. Winter Van Kessel froze, but I don't know. Can she hear my question? So my question, and I mean, which has to be answered, and we may be doing it next week at council or maybe in another cycle, but we have a budget coming up. We're going to be starting our budget process shortly. So for this coming budget for 2022, is this what we're going to be asking the residents for?
Ms. Winger Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, because we have more work to do, we are only going to be including the 1%. I'm getting a connection unstable message, so I'm sorry if I'm freezing, but we're only going to be asking for the 1% fiscal strategy that we've asked for the last few years until we do further analysis to establish what our long-term requirements are.
Counselor?
So we'll be putting ourselves behind whatever number of years it says in the chart. We can just add another year to that.
Ms. Mary Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would effectively delay the start, but it depends on what that further analysis means. It could lower the obligations to some degree as well.
Counselor?
I certainly hope it does. I think it's interesting that an election year is coming up and we're going to be very cautious with our tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I was going to suggest that council, if you wanted to refer it to the October council meeting, give everyone the opportunity to go through this. I'll just let everyone know I'm fine with that and I'm in favor of that. If everyone takes the opportunity to sit down with staff and go through it. And if we do that and we get a full understanding, I think it's good use of time for us to do that and take the time, because this is an important document and it's important to get it right. So I'll be fine with that. If someone wants to move a motion to refer it to the October council meeting. Councilor Gardner, did you want to move that?
I do, but could I also suggest, instead of each one of us who wants to speaking to staff and taking up so much of their time, maybe we could have kind of a Zoom workshop or a time for people to ask questions?
Well, I mean, we can do that, but I think that staff afford their time every week for us to be able to give them a call and go through and ask them questions. I'm sure Ms. Waymire Van Kessel will make the time necessary for each and every one of us over the next month to be able to answer any of our questions in regards to this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought it would be more time efficient for Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel to do it in more of a workshop form. Anyway, yes, I believe I'm in favor of moving that motion.
Okay, seconder, refer that to the October council meeting. Councilor Gilliland, thank you. Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.4. Revision to draft plan of subdivision approval to include a 3-year lapsing provision, Edenbrook, Inc. The recommendations are: 1, that report number PDS 21-100 be received. 2, that the draft approved plan of subdivision conditions for Edenbrook, Aurora, Inc. at 929 St. John Side Road, file D12-06-12 be revised to include a new condition that draft subdivision approval will expire 3 years following the date of this revision. And 3, that this revision to the draft approved plan of subdivision conditions is considered minor and does not require notice in accordance with section 5147 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councilor Gallo, Councilor Thompson, seconder. Okay. Thank you. Any comments or questions on this one? Councilor Gallo, go ahead.
Just really quickly, I think it makes a lot of sense. You don't use it, you lose it. Maybe a quick explanation, if we know from Mr. Waters what the status of the application is. We have a sense of why they haven't moved on it, or any information.
Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the application at the moment is inactive. I understand they are looking at acquiring the neighboring property and consolidating the two plans. But that's as much as I know at the moment, sir.
Councilor.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe I read in the report that there's no obligation for us to communicate this to the applicant, but is that something that we would be doing and maybe spark something? And
Mr. Waters.
Through Mr. Mayor, we have already contacted the applicant's consultant, and they are aware of the proposed draft plan lapsing condition that we're bringing forward tonight.
Okay, thank
Counselor?
you. I agree with this. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other Counselor Gardner, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to thank Mr. Waters or his department for catching this. I'm pretty disappointed that this has been going on for so many years, and well, I'm pretty disappointed we didn't get it put into the original agreement, but it's been an oversight for a long time. So thanks to Mr. Waters and the department or whoever found it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.5, Aurora Promenade Community Improvement Plan. Recommendation 1, that report number PDS 21-108 be received. 2, that the staff be authorized to initiate the process to update the Aurora Promenade Community Improvement Plan. Someone would like to move the recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, seconder. Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions on this item? Seeing none. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Couple of notice motions that we'll be dealing with next week. No regional report. New business. Councillor Gillan. Start to my right.
Is this on? Okay. Sorry, caught me off guard here going first. I just wanted to, oh, no, public announcement. I'm okay. Thank you.
So you want PSAs?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Humphreys, new business. Councillor Thompson, new business. Councillor Gallo, new business. Councillor Gardner, new business.
If you could just give, excuse me, could you just give me a minute
Sure.
or a few seconds? Well, I would like to say that the Jewish high holidays just passed, or actually holy days. We're in the year 5782. So the religion is pretty old. And I thought something that was said was quite interesting. It's a time for turning, returning, and an opportunity for new beginnings. And I know council doesn't follow this calendar, but my hope is that we will really begin to take the environment and climate change and how developments can help us out with that seriously as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. PSAs, did you have any, Councillor Gardner?
I must have one somewhere. Well, Mr. Mayor, maybe you could speak to, I'm not that familiar with what is going to be happening on the 30th September in the town park. I know the cultural center is having an Indigenous event from 4 to 6. And then I think the town is doing something.
Yes, they are. If you want, Ms. McDougall, did you want to just add to that? If you can just give a quick, brief explanation of what is occurring in the town on the 30th.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, we are certainly looking and recognizing this day as a very special day for Aurora and certainly for the rest of Canada. And with that, the town of Aurora will be hosting an event from 6 until 8 p.m. This initiative is an opportunity for the municipality and residents alike to come and learn. And it's an opportunity to recognize and learn what we maybe don't know yet and what we should know, and recognize through that the support of Anishinaabe grandmother Kim Wheatley, some stories that she will be sharing with us during that time. And there will also be a ceremonial fire for us to take a moment and recognize and consider the Indigenous relations and certainly things that have happened through the residential schools. pairing that, the Aurora Cultural Center is also sharing through their relations with the Georgina Island group some additional considerations of a similar tone, certainly to support and recognize what this day means for Aurora and for the country, and certainly to listen and most importantly learn. So certainly join us on Town Park, September 30th, 4 o'clock for the Aurora Cultural Center. They will initiate their event activities, and then the towns will commence at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. And I'll just add, Councillor Gardner, that for anyone that they need more information, they can visit aurora.ca/truth and reconciliation.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add to what Ms. McDougall said. It's a time to listen, to learn, and to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallo, PSA.
Thank you. Just on that note, I wrote down in my notes when you read out the land acknowledgement, share the land, and I couldn't agree more. And I'll just a quick story about a discussion I had not that long ago with a family member, young, very well educated, university student, and I was speaking about this, and I had said, we in very general terms, we took the land from them, and she barked back at me and said, I didn't do anything. And I think that's part of the problem, that we're not acknowledging, yes, I physically, myself, I didn't do anything, but we as a collective did, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to figure out how to reconcile that. So these things are super important right now, especially for our youth to understand that. So I'm happy we're doing all this. The second thing, a little more difficult to communicate, but I felt compelled to say a few words about what's going on, particularly in the town of Aurora and mandated vaccine policies. I wanted to just speak to the 200 or so employees of the town of Aurora that I don't agree with what's happening. I want them to know that these are very difficult times for everyone, and that I respect those who made decisions to vaccinate. Equally, I respect those who are choosing not to, but more so, I respect the sanctity of everyone's privilege, especially in this country, that it is nobody's business what you do medically with your body. That's between you and your doctor. I realize that's not shared across the board, but I did want to reach out to all members of staff to let them know, at least from where I sit, that's my viewpoint on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson, PSA. Councillor Humphreys, PSA.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that farmers market every Saturday, as we all know, from 8 to 1, and there is a food pantry drive happening starting this weekend. And for the next 2 weeks, lots of events. Please visit the market, donate to the food pantry, and always some great happenings at the market all the time, including some great music. So hopefully we'll see everyone there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, PSA. Oh, Councillor, just push it, and then remember, push to speak. Yeah, there you go. And then now you're good.
All right. It's been a while. I just wanted to talk about arts and culture. The Aurora Pops Up. It's been a huge success, especially throughout Aurora. I know that they've done some showcasing at Municipal's Alley, but they've also do it all around town. They're on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check them out on their website. But they are having these pop-ups on Thursday, the 23rd at Town Hall and Municipal's Alley. You can check out the times, and this Saturday as well, Hickson Park and Aurora Town Park. I just think this is a great way to kind of spread culture throughout the town and discover new stuff. So If we need something to do and check something with the family, I encourage you to check that out. It's 100% free, and I guarantee it's entertaining. The other thing that's back and I'm really excited is Culture Days from the town of Aurora, and Culture in the Box was so successful last year, and we have it again. So please check out aurora.ca/culture days. There's so much going on. Too much for me to explain here, so I encourage you to check it out at our website. Thanks.
Thank you. I just have a couple. Town of Aurora, in partnership with the Canadian Food and Wine Institute and the Aurora Chamber of Commerce, is proud to bring Aurora Licious. Until October 3rd, experience a taste of the town for many participating restaurants. For more information, visit exploreaurora.ca. It is a great opportunity to learn and experience the many local restaurants that we have and the great food we have in this town. So I encourage everyone to get out there, visit the website, and check out what is being offered by our local restaurants. And I know we did talk about September 30th, but I did just want to mention council and to the public that I will get you a time. I don't have a definite time as of yet. We will be raising a flag that day as well. So I will make sure that each and every one of you are made aware at the time that we will be doing that, okay? Our fall 2021 program guide has arrived, including both in-person and virtual programs for all ages. The guide can be viewed online at aurora.ca/rec guide. Pre-registration is required for all programs and drop-in activities at aurora.ca/eplay. On October 7th, come out and enjoy a mixture of Celtic, rock, roots, military, and classical music from the American Rogues at Aurora Town Park for the 2021 Colors of Fall concert. This is a free event that requires pre-registration. Actually, I hate the word free. Everyone knows that. So it's not really a free event. It's a subsidized event and funded in part by the municipality and obviously the province. For more information, visit aurora.ca/fall concerts. Aurora's online Skylight Gallery in September is featuring works by artist David Murphy in a series called 50 Years. His paintings contain a vibrant use of color with clever color combinations with subtle values and tones. David's landscape paintings evoke a sense of stillness and contemplation, while his abstract paintings express energy, movement, and emotion. 50 years ago, David started to paint as a diversion while attending law school. Throughout his career, he has worked with northern landscapes in an impressionistic style and has branched out to cityscapes while living overseas, mainly in Europe. All his works are for sale and can be viewed at aurora.ca/skylight gallery. Our recreation centers are now open for indoor sports activities. Pre-registration is required. For the AFLC drop-in schedule, please visit aurora.ca/AFLC drop-in. And for skating activities, visit aurora.ca/skatings. And that's it, Council. With that, Councillor Gardner, did you have something to add?
So sorry, Mr. Mayor, not to think of this earlier. I'd just like to add that the Cultural Center also has a very interesting art show that is online until I believe the middle of October. And the second thing is a lot of people have thanked me for the beautiful floral display along Yonge Street. And of course, I have nothing to do with it, so I take the thanks. But I was in Speedy Automotive Express, I think it's called now. We no longer have Speedy Muffler in town, Mr. Mayor. And the owner was so appreciative and asked if I would thank council and staff for just providing so much enjoyment. And so there it is. As always, we have beautiful floral displays, but I think this year staff, or maybe the weather, has outdone itself. So appreciation from Speedy, but from so many businesses and residents in town.
Thank you, Councillor. Actually, I was just going to call adjournment, but just one more thing, council. There was obviously, we all know there was a federal election. I did want to congratulate our elected MPs, Tony Van Bynen for Newmarket Aurora, and Leah Taylor Roy for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. And I also wanted to, thank everyone, all the candidates that put their names forward. And it's obviously, especially one of our own, Councillor Kim, for putting his name forward and the hard work he did. And then also thank Leona Alislav, who will be walking away at this time, didn't get reelected, but for her 6 years of service to our community, and thank her for that. So with that said, I will call for adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. See you all next week. Have a good week, everyone.